Okay, Nick and Andy, it's that time of the season now. We've reached the run-in, the final stretch for the Premier League campaign. There's so much going on up and down the league. Of course, we have to start at the very top of the table. Let's discuss who's going to finish where. Let's start with the title race. We'll talk about top four in Europe as well. But we look at the title race, Nick Mendola. It is so close. Obviously, Arsenal top, on goal difference from Liverpool. Man City just a point back. Have you changed your mind since the last time we spoke about this? We've been speaking about it a lot, but I feel like every day I wake up and feel slightly differently about these three teams and where they're going to finish.
For sure. I think this is the most uncertain I've felt over it because from the beginning of the season, I just keep saying to myself, but eventually Man City, but eventually Man City, but eventually, yeah. And so there's a part of me that leans that way, but the difference is there's a game coming up, a huge, huge game. And that's the one that would scare me if I was either team, because if they all had to play each other, what I would tell you guys is, I actually kind of like Liverpool here because they get to play the same team twice. That's what Arsenal kind of has become to me. I don't want to call them the JV version, but it's just so similar. Odegaard in the KDB role, Declan Rice in the Rodri role. There's no Haaland, but they would love for that to happen. And so whatever is going to happen at the end of this month will probably finally give me a little bit of clarity. So for now, I'm still leaning Man City, but it's only because I'm doing what guys who predict things do and stick with myself like an egotistical maniac.
Well, I'm with you on that as well. I think but that's huge. March 31st, if we look ahead to that, Andy, obviously Man City, Arsenal at the Etihad Stadium. Arsenal beaten City, so they have that this season. They have that, feather in their cap. Arteta knows that he can do that now. And it's just interesting to me with that, and then also potential Champions League semi-final between these two teams as well. Just the rivalry, the storyline, like Nick mentioned there, how similar their setup, style of play. I don't know who I favour in that game. I mean, usually I favour Man City, but I think Arsenal have improved so much this season in these big games that I would say probably a draw for that one, and then we're no closer to really figuring out this title situation.
I'll tell you who I favor in that game. I favor Liverpool in that game.
Yeah.
I think I am going to do the flip. I'm going to do the flip, and it's because it's the way that game went. City-Liverpool ending in a draw. That was going to be the moment in my mind. City accelerate ahead. They didn't quite do that. They left the door wide open, and now having to play Arsenal, I see a draw in that one. And I see Liverpool going top that weekend, and I don't see Liverpool giving it back after they go top once again. And so I think that little advantage that they're going to get from that weekend is going to be what leads them on to go on and win the title. It's what Nick said. City they've looked great all season, but there's finally two other teams that are very, very close to their level and challenging them every single week, and there is no margin for error. And we've seen them be imperfect for the first time in a few seasons, and it's got to be hard to continue to just gobble up every single trophy and keep that same level of focus and work every single day. And that's not to say that City have slipped, but Liverpool and Arsenal have strived for something incredible, and they've caught them. And this is going to be an incredible title race down the stretch. I think it's ultimately going to end up with Liverpool. And I at no point in the offseason, early in the season, middle of the season, even recently, did I feel like Liverpool was maybe even the second place finisher in the Premier League this season. But I think now I've got them. Yeah, they're going to be champions.
Nick, one quick thing for me on Liverpool, I don't know if you agree with this, but the way that they lost against Manchester United in the FA Cup quarter-final, does that have any impact on sort of taking the shine a little bit off this quadruple charge and maybe being a bit naive almost and a bit too cavalier and getting caught out by Man United? Can we read into that too much, or is that just a one-off instance in a derby game? It can happen, move on.
Maybe momentarily. And there is some danger in that for sure. But I just kind of look at that entire setup and think Liverpool now have one less thing to kind of worry about. And exactly. I was a little bit worried about how they would handle that threat because, Atalanta isn't an easy thing in the Europa League. What I love about this and Liverpool still being in it is what it adds to that return to Old Trafford that they have later this season, what it adds to playing Villa and Spurs, and especially what it adds to that what could be a momentous derby at Goodison Park. So I was looking at Liverpool's schedule before the draw against Man City and thinking, oh, maybe they'll skate through it. That loss at Man United, I think, it makes the rest of the run-in a little bit tastier.
Yeah, intriguing to see how they're going to rotate the squad, with the Europa League still obviously being a huge focus as well. But Premier League now has to be obviously the main focus for Klopp here on out. If we switch focus and look at the Champions League spots and the teams chasing there, Aston Villa and Tottenham are right there. Obviously, Villa in 4th place, Spurs in 5th, but have a game in hand behind them. And Man United just lurking there a bit ominously now after both Villa and Spurs have dropped points in recent weeks. And Andy is our coefficient king here at PST. So he's been crunching the numbers with UEFA and figuring out what it's going to take for 5th place to be an extra Champions League spot for the Premier League for next season, when everything's restructured in the Champions League, like more games, more teams. So Andy, tell us about that, because essentially it would take an almighty collapse and all English teams would have to exit Europe in all 3 competitions remaining at the quarterfinal stage for 5th place not to be a Champions League spot, right? So that's great news for Man United if they can surge, and for Tottenham and Villa as well.
Yeah, the second legs of the round of 16 in both the Champions League and the Europa League were a massive swing between Germany, who had a pretty good stranglehold on second coming out of the group stage period and going into the knockout rounds. Lost a couple teams, lost to an English team. West Ham overturned in the second leg a deficit to Freiburg to advance, and nearly even now. Germany and England at this point. I believe England 1 or 2 more teams left in the tournament. But the key fact being that it's City and that it's Arsenal, 2 teams we expect to go on even to the semifinals and add more points up for the Premier League. So, like you said, Joe, unless there is a collapse, Premier League going to get a 5th Champions League spot for next season, and probably something that'll be just about a yearly tradition, right?
You would think so. Nick, when we talk about that 5th spot, obviously Tottenham and Villa look like they're in pole position to qualify for the Champions League. But are you writing off Man United? Do you trust both Villa and Spurs to kind of lock this up and get it done? Because in recent weeks, they've shown a few signs where they maybe cannot be trusted, those 2.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I definitely don't. I like Spurs out of the bunch, certainly because of the way that the competition is focused right now. And Unai Emery loves a tournament. I think what it could mean for Aston Villa to win a tournament is something that could really take it to another level for them. And I realize it just means, going back to Europa, right? But I really think it opens up the discussion. Tottenham, I feel comfortable about. Villa's prone to that game where we've talked about it, where they just they go down a goal and then they're like, well, maybe next week. And so, look, Man United has a chance to build its own confidence. So I would tell you that I would bet on Spurs. I would think Villa gets there, but Man United has been there as a club, and you never know.
And one of the other things to notice about if the 5th place is a Champions League spot, obviously that means spots keep moving down the table. And then if the FA Cup winner has qualified for Europe, which, if it's City or maybe United, that seems very likely, that spot's going to move down as well. So there's a whole bunch of teams there that really have European aspirations. I wouldn't say all of a sudden, but I've been hoping for it for a while. And now another spot seems to have dropped down. So we got West Ham pushing for the Europa League again, still in the Europa League at the quarterfinal stages once again. Brighton, Wolves, Newcastle, Chelsea. Even if you look down to Fulham potentially, Andy, all of these teams now, they're fighting for something.
Yeah, it's really interesting up and down the entire table this season, and it's the first time that we've had that kind of all over the place in quite a while. I think West Ham have a good look to them at this time of the season. They now have a bit of experience balancing multiple competitions, having gone and done what they did last season. So I think that they're, while inconsistent in the Premier League from week to week, they've got a bit of that Aston Villa about them, Nick. They could show up and they could win 3-0. They could lose 5-0 on the same exact day. You never quite know what you're going to get out of them. But I think they get over the line. I would say Wolves get in there as well, but it sounds like Pedro Neto was going to be out for most, if not all, of the rest of the season. I think he would be the X factor for that team. And so I kind of look at Newcastle and say, it's up to you. If you want it, it's there. It's yours. Get a couple players back healthy. I think getting Harvey Barnes just for the depth back and the way that Alexander Isak has looked in recent appearances for Newcastle, I think I would pick them to kind of sneak in and maybe grab that final spot for Europe.
Yeah, Chelsea's interesting, kind of a tougher schedule. West Ham, Brighton have a really hard schedule as well remaining. So I don't know, something crazy could happen like Fulham now that they've found their goal scoring formula up top. Don't rule them out to make maybe a late season charge up the table. But it's going to be really, really interesting. We'll keep you updated on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com and all the latest with the title race, top 4/5 scrap, and also the European race as well, with all those places still up for grabs. So much fun. We'll keep you updated on PST.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.